So our next panel is When Community Engagement Works, Success Stories and Best Practices.
Do I use this one or this one?
You want.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Y'all had a long day. They don't give you a break in between, so thanks for sticking in with us to talk about the ever increasingly important topic of community engagement and workforce development. We have three great speakers for you today, two from Houston and one from Alaska, his first trip to Texas, so let's give them a round of applause. He is the only person wearing boots on the stage, you'll notice, so he's working it. You all probably have heard about the growing importance of community engagement, environmental justice, and workforce development in the energy transition. While a lot of companies, especially energy companies, have practiced some outstanding community engagement programs and practices, there's a lot more to do. And communities are demanding more and more authentic and long-term bilateral engagement. They don't want to just hear what's about to happen in their neighborhood or in their town, but they want to be really authentically involved in the planning, the design, and the implementation of these projects. Yet at the same time, these projects are essential, especially low carbon intensity projects, are essential to the energy transition. So there's this sort of growing tension between these things. At the same time, we know that there is some pressure on the workforce around the energy transition and whether we even have the growing capacity that we need, the education programs that we need to develop and deploy a high-tech energy transition and all the technologies that are involved in it. So we're going to visit some of these issues today very briefly. I'm going to jump right in so that we can hear from our experts and from you all. We want to have your questions whenever you feel like having a question answered. Let us know, and we're going to run microphones around, I think is the format in this panel. So our first panelist, immediately to my left, is Dorian Cockrell. There is full biographical information, by the way, on the website. Dorian is Vice President of Global Philanthropy at JPMorgan Chase, where he oversees Chase's philanthropic investments in Houston, Central Texas, and Oklahoma. Next, we have Nagruk Harcharek, who is President of the Voice of the Arctic, which is a nonprofit communication network of Arctic slope communities that lend a unified voice to promote their region and their people. And finally, we have Juliet Stipeche, who is Executive Director of the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, where she drives strategies to meet the region's diverse employment and training needs. So the format of this panel is each of our friends here are going to say a few minutes about their perspectives on workforce and community engagement. And then I'll have a few questions, moderator's prerogative. But if you all want to immediately go into questions for them, we can also do that. So we have until 4:45. I'm going to try, no, I guess I won't because I don't have my phone, Oh, there it is. Okay. So we are going to speed through this. So get your questions ready. Thanks very much.
Hello, everybody. Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Good afternoon. My name again is Dorian Cockrell. I lead the JPMorgan Chase Foundation here in Austin, also San Antonio, in Houston, and Oklahoma for the foundation. I'm able to set the strategy with our 4 pillars that we have focusing on impacting communities. And so those 4 pillars are workforce development, small business, financial health, and community development. specifically as it relates to workforce development and the conversation we're having today. In Houston, we have formed a collaborative of 38 organizations really united to work together to set a table to talk about the future of work, those occupations that maintain through natural disasters, our flooding and our hurricanes. And so I am proud to say JPMorgan Chase made the initial investment to set the table for the county, the city, our Council of Governments, our Workforce Investment Board. Houston Community College leads the collaborative. We work closely with UT, we work with U of H, Vanderbilt, a number of businesses and nonprofit organizations to all pull our resources together to learn how we can engage community, how community voice can be at the table. And so those opportunities in neighborhoods that have been overlooked and underestimated, giving those individuals who want a career in energy and resiliency an opportunity to engage and participate for higher paying jobs. And so really excited to be here to talk about the work that we're doing in Houston. Also some of the work, if we want to talk about in Austin, we do have a high heat resiliency strategy that we're working with the city of Austin and Travis County to lead the work. As we all know, Central Texas is extremely hot in the summertime and the workforce lacks because of it. And so we can talk about that, but in Houston, it's unique. No other major market, New York, Chicago, LA, has brought together the county, the city, and all the different entities that we have to focus in on community and how all of those individuals or all of those entities can participate in providing a solid foundation for our workforce pipeline in those sectors. So thank you for allowing me to be here and happy to have a conversation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. As Marilu introduced me, Nagruk Harcharek. I'm the president for the Voice of the Arctic Iñupiat. I am from Utqiagvik, or Barrow, Alaska. It's the northernmost community in the state of Alaska, in the United States, actually. And just a fun fact that we were talking about in the room there, Alaska is, I'm sorry to say, but Alaska is the largest state in the Union. And Marilu did some research. It is twice the size of Texas. Don't hold that against me. But just a little bit of history of why I'm here and why I represent the people that I do. So the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was passed in 1971. It was a large departure from the reservation system that largely took place down here in the lower 48. What it did for us in Alaska is establish 12 regional for-profit corporations and made them landowners, fee simple title, established 200 village corporations across the state of Alaska, and they are landowners as well, and compensated the indigenous people in Alaska almost $1 billion for land lost. Our region encompasses 58 million acres. That's what we originally asked for in that claim settlement, and we were given 5 million acres when it was all said and done. What that did is it created a fragmented system of representation for the Alaska Native community. So in any community within the state, you'll have a tribe that has a government-to-government relationship. You'll have an Alaska Native corporation whose shareholders are those members of that community or that region. You also have, in some respects, in some areas, city governments. And then the overarching regional organizations, we have at least on the North Slope, we have a municipality that represents and provides services for the 8 communities and 10,000 people that currently continue to live on the North Slope. We have a Arctic Slope Native Association that provides health care and social services. We have a college, school district. All of these in large part funded through the North Slope Borough because of their taxing authority over the oil and gas infrastructure that is on the North Slope of Alaska. 95% of their budget for the North Slope Borough comes from taxing oil and gas industry, and then they reinvest that money into the community. So we're 1 or 2 generations from living in third world, essentially living conditions. I remember growing up when the first flush toilets were introduced into the house that I grew up in, and then just before that, the living conditions were very complex. So fast forward 2015, you have all these different organizations all trying to speak on their own behalf and trying to get things, policies, state policies, federal policies, to include their voices. And having such a fragmented system of representation, it wasn't a really effective way to communicate with the federal and state government. So they decided, the leadership on the North Slope decided to form the organization that I now lead, the Voice of the Arctic Iñupiat. We have a 24-member board made up of elected leaders on the North Slope from those various communities, from those various organizations, and we come together twice a year, if not more than that, when the need arises to discuss issues on the North Slope or policy changes on the North Slope, one of them being the Willow Development Project. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, large oil development project on the North Slope. I was directed by those elected leaders to advocate for the passage of that project. So just an example of some of the things that we work on, but I really wanted to set the stage for why I'm here and why I do the work that we do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Juliet Stipeche, and I am the Executive Director of the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, which is the largest workforce board in the state of Texas. And so I've served in this position for about 2 years. And we have looked at our divisions and trying to redesign it. I noticed that we had a place that was missing. And so we created a division devoted to community engagement. And we also created a division devoted to education. We brought back principal industry liaisons. I'm joined by 2, Amber and Lacey, who are here today, because we wanted to be able to have persons that are experts that can talk to business and understand what's going on in the fields. And so you can tell by just those small changes that we are trying to better understand the community that we serve. And who do we serve? Well, we serve both employers and residents. We try to make sure that employers can find talent in the region to satisfy their workforce needs. And everybody knows how challenging that's been with the economy, but also with the challenges that came our way from COVID. And so, the system that I run is funded through federal funds, and, sometimes it can be a little slow to change. And so that's one reason why we're really trying to be intentional in setting deeper roots and understanding what's happening in our community. And so people rely upon us to provide them with information about what's happening in the labor market, what's happening with new emerging areas, what are strong, high-skill, high-growth targeted areas that people can go and study or get a fast-track certification and be able to get a good job. But we are saying we want people to also have great careers. We want to be able to use our resources to strengthen communities, especially those that have been underappreciated, underserved, and who have also had the brunt of a lot of the environmental challenges and issues. And so we know that, Houston in particular has had a lot of different experiences when it comes to climate challenges and change. And so during Hurricane Harvey, I was serving as the mayor's director of Houston for the mayor's director of education for the city of Houston. And, you could see that the city had a lot of communication and collaboration going on, but there was challenges in terms of coordinating. I tell folks, I used to take calls from different community organizations and be able to know, what do you do? And what do you do? And what are the different employers doing in the region? But when the emergency struck, it caused us to say, how can we really band together and develop a system that is not just reactionary, but is also going to help us build our resiliency, help us become more supportive, and help empower communities. And so part of JPMorgan's leadership in creating the Resilient Workforce Collaborative is addressing the situation of how are we able to lift communities up so that way when these challenges occur, we have people that have capacity. We also, at the Workforce Board, want to work with education providers and trainers to say, how can we also build the residents and communities' capacity as well as capability? And how do we make sure that we don't lead people to roads to nowhere? We want to make sure that we're providing them connections to information so that way folks are upskilled and trained in areas where they can find a strong future. And so community engagement is extraordinarily important because, one, people don't know what they don't know. Two, We have so many folks in the community that have vast amounts of information, research, resources. But if it doesn't get to the people, how impactful can it be? And so our purpose is to help serve as a convener, to get the diverse array of people in education, employment, and our community, to enlist the support of the community benefits organizations that exist, to create a convening so that way we can have a tapestry of individuals that when there is a crisis, you know who to call. When there is a challenge, we have already had discussions and have made plans. And so we are stronger together, but that requires us to truly develop relationships of trust, and that is built over time. So, I tell folks the pulse of progress is dependent on people. And the speed of progress is also dependent on the trust that you build with the community that you serve.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn this on. So thank you all very much. I have a couple questions for you. I heard some common elements among your three comments. And I'm wondering if maybe you could reflect back to us what you see in these sort of common elements as possible best practices on community engagement. You all, so these are just some common things I heard. You're all conveners in totally different ways. You have an information trading dynamic. You can't do your job for the community unless you hear from them, and they can't get what they need without hearing from you. So there's a trust element and credibility. So what else is there? Of course, you have to have funding, and you're all funded differently, privately, through tax revenue. You're funded, you said, through the federal government.
A lot of federal grants.
So what else is there? If you're a company, a university, teaching community engagement or something, or an agency, what would you tell them that they need to do to have effective community engagement?
Yeah. Know the problem. In Houston, 1 out of 5 workers earn less than $15,000 annually. Just think about that. 20% of the Houston workforce earns less than $15,000 on an annual basis. Also, we have an Understanding Houston report where white households earn 109% more than black households in Houston from a 2021 study coming after the pandemic. And so just imagine if, a white household is earning $100K, that African-American household is earning less than 50. And the numbers dictate that. Like, we're looking at those numbers, right now. And so we're not looking at it from a racial standpoint. This is very much an economic standpoint in how we ensure that we have in place-based strategies, and also hearing from community about the barriers that they're facing to receive employment or get the skills that they need to get a better job or get the skills. And so what I would, encourage employers, what I would encourage educational institutions is to really understand where people are so you can build from that. And so you're not looking at it like a status quo, like, oh, you graduate and automatically you're gonna get a good paying job and so on and so forth. I can tell you 20% of the city that's earning $15,000 annually and less have some college education. They are individuals who can hold higher paying jobs. It's just these opportunities aren't available, or they aren't aware of these opportunities that are available to remove barriers for them, which our public workforce system and other educational institutions and nonprofits are able to do. But then employers understanding the need in the community and looking to those individuals that are supporting and cultivating this talent to really be able to position those individuals to get higher paying careers. And so you have to know the data. We make data-informed decisions. We don't make emotional decisions. We look at what the data indicates and dictates to us. We share that information with employers through labor market information with the Gulf Coast Workforce Board. And so that would be the one thing that I would say on the onset, know your problem intimately, not at a very surface level, but really understand what people are going through in their homes so you can begin to develop the curriculum, so you can begin to develop the training, the performance-based outcomes, working with industry, so you can understand not just the curriculum is teaching, but also the performance-based outcomes align with the job that they're going to do as well. So individuals graduating from the university or coming out of any kind of training programs that you offer are really prepared, and that doesn't happen unless you're looking at the data and you have strong relationships with business and employers.
Just to add to that, I'd say early and often, right? Have to engage early, have to engage often, even if you're in the beginning stages of developing a project. Lots of examples on the North Slope where I'm from of both good engagement as well as bad engagement. Example and a lot of the engagements leading up to where we are now, we've had to engage. We had the resources available to us to be able to force that engagement. We were able to create the North Slope Borough that forced industry to engage with the communities and be able to provide benefit. But most recently, with respect to the federal government, for example, I'm going to pick on them. I don't know if there's anybody here from the feds, but take the Willow Development Project, for example. Lots of community meetings from the federal government, from industry. They know that they can't do projects without our approval. The North Slope Borough has to permit those projects, has to rezone the area, so they have to engage. They actually have to go to our meetings on the North Slope and get the zoning commission to rezone areas for them to be able to develop projects. Multiple community meetings, just, I wouldn't say a poster child, but definitely a good example of how to engage. And they did it early and they did it often over the course of probably 10 or 15 years. Poor example, most recently, that I'm fighting with right now is proposed rules for land. The North Slope of Alaska has within it the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska. We also have most of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge within the North Slope of Alaska. They proposed new rules for the National Petroleum Reserve in which they want to make 13 million acres of a petroleum reserve into de facto wilderness. Lots of gray area in the rules and things. Did not engage with any of the organizations that I represent before, while they were drafting that rule, and it took them months and multiple trips from us going to DC and forcing their hand to try to get formal consultation from the federal government that they are required to do by federal law. Very bad example, and we continue to fight today. As a matter of fact, I was in my hotel room before I came down here for this session, and we were on the phone with OIRA, and they're the ones that review the rules before they go back to BLM, but I won't bore you with those details. And you have to build a trusting relationship, because if you look at Biden, the current administration's view on indigenous communities, they have all these wonderful documents that say we want to engage, we have to engage, you must engage with communities, you have to figure out what the benefits are going to be, you have to figure out what the downsides are going to be to all this, right? And they put these in White House executive orders, things like that. They look really good on paper, but when it comes down to, I guess, putting your money where your mouth is, we got none of that, right? For what reasons, we don't know. We can't get answers out of them for that, but it's a very good example of how not to engage, and also to build that trusting relationship. If you're going to say you're going to do something, right, at least have the courtesy to engage and have a conversation, even if it's going to be bad news, and we've told them that at the White House to their face. Like, even if you're going to make a decision that we're going to oppose, we'd appreciate it. As a matter of fact, our mayor, who is newly elected, and we were in the office with BLM, he told the deputy secretary of the Department of Interior, like, if you're going to stab me in the front, so at least I know who it's coming from. It got that confrontational. So it's really important that you're going to say something, try to act on those words, and also engage very early, very often, even if it's going to be bad news.
Yeah, thank you. I think folks, they were doing have a natural cynicism towards government these days and a lack of trust. And so, you know, it's extraordinarily important to, one, be informed, but, you know, it's like folks want the common decency and respect to be able to have an honest, candid conversation. And sometimes there are not a lot of forums for those to take place. Sometimes they might be avoided. And so, you know, it's like when folks see you in the community before there's an ask, that's extraordinarily significant because it shows that you were invested beforehand. And so that's why it shouldn't be that you're arriving just when you want something. You know, it's like you become more trusted when you're a common fixture in the community. You know it. You know the haunts. You know the people. You go to a meeting and you're familiar with what's going on. You know what's happening in the schools or, you know, in the local community. And so folks really respect and appreciate that. And so I think it's, you know, when you hear the word engagement, you know, I actually looked this up, right? And so engagement, you know, sometimes you can use the term, it's like, we engage, and you can engage in a fight, right? And you don't necessarily want to do that, but the natural derivative, or the original one, is, of course, talking about a commitment. We get engaged to be married, right? And so it's saying that you're developing a trusting relationship, and that is built over time, and it's strengthened over time. And that's just natural with the way humans, you know, interact with one another. And I think it's bringing in that element of humanity into our work. Community is the nexus of people having a common rapport and language to interact with one another. And so as we, you know, move into a society that is so informationally connected but socially disconnected, it's important for us to be very conscientious and to have this incorporated into our work in order for it to be successful.
Yeah. May I add? Because we're talking about community engagement, and so I'm in a lot of meetings with a lot of funders, and we're talking about neighborhoods. And then when I ask them, have you ever been to that neighborhood? They're like, oh, no, I just looked at the data, right? And so, you know, you have to go into the community. So that's one thing that we were able to do with our Resiliency Workforce Collaborative. We went into the communities, we spoke with the people, we had meetings in the community at places traditionally where, you know, we would not, we would engage in community conversations to understand from a youth perspective, from a single parent perspective, from anybody recently incarcerated, returning home from criminal justice system, talking to those folks. It's more than just like Juliet is saying, it's the engagement, it's the commitment. And it's really knowing what the community looks like. It's understanding if you have public transit available, how far are the bus stops from, you know, neighborhoods, you know, really not just at a high level, but getting into these neighborhoods and places and having that real tangible aspect of, okay, I get it. Like, I've been to this community, I've been to this neighborhood, I've actually went into some of the stores and saw some of the groceries and the produce. Like, I've actually went into some of the businesses and saw some of the people there. And it's taking that step that makes it a critical impact for how you make decisions and engaging those individuals to help you in the conversation as well. And so I just wanted to add that point as far as community engagement. If you aren't going into the communities that you're trying to serve and actually speaking with people that live there and allowing them to, you know, call and response, tell you what's going on, then you'll just be in a position where you're making decisions for someone and then it may not even be what they want, right? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to just kind of make that point of clarification. Whatever your, you know, discipline is, or your industry, or if you're a student, or if you're an employer, or if you're a community, you know, advocate, really getting into the communities in these neighborhoods is going to be critically important for your intellectual development and how you use that with the data to make decisions as you begin to develop programs that improve people's lives.
I have one more question, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. So, sort of the flip side of this, you on workforce development, if you were a University of Texas or a community college or a vocational school, educating tomorrow's workforce, say, for the energy transition. So these are not maybe people, the skills that we currently have are not necessarily the skills that we need 20 years from now or something. What's a way, or is there a way that your organizations can work with educational organizations, higher ed primarily, to learn, for them to hear what the workforce needs are, say, from the industry, also what the community, what kinds of jobs people want, and then also sort of dynamic, because then the universities or the higher ed organizations are the ones that are delivering it. So is there an opportunity for any of that in your work?
I'd start, so on the North Slope, we're challenged with that. There's a lot of industry on the North Slope, but a lot of folks, they want to stay home. They want to work at home because that's where their life is. They want to subsist. We do a lot of subsistence hunting. Those of you that don't know what that is, if you've ever been to, I invite you to come to the North Slope. You go to the grocery store where a gallon of milk is $13, right? Very expensive. Steaks are not cheap as they may be in Texas. So we supplement a lot of that food with subsistence hunting, where we catch our own animals and bring that home. So jobs are extremely important in those communities, and having access to those jobs, because in order for us to subsist now, I don't go home and jump on a dog team. I go home and I get on a snowmobile, right? That costs money. And in order for those folks to be able to do that, they need jobs. In order for them to have those jobs in those communities where there are some, they do need that workforce development training. The North Slope Borough provides those jobs in those communities, and the college that's on the North Slope provides a lot of grant-funded education opportunities for doing things like water and sewer treatment plants, commercial driver's licensing activities. Anything that's going on in the village, you can come to the hub, which is Barrow, where I'm from, and you can get that training. But as we're transitioning, or if that transition starts on the North Slope, right, that training is going to have to be adjusted at that college level, which we're fortunate to have access to on the North Slope. But without examples of what that looks like or what we need to do to be able to do that university, without that engagement early and often, isn't going to be able to make those adjustments overnight, right? So as things are transitioning, there has to be a process for getting the expertise into the area to be able to provide that training for those communities and things, and then taking that training and getting folks from those communities into that university or into those workforce development programs to be able to work on and support that transition within their community without having to import workers from the outside. It's a huge problem on the North Slope, which then you're just exporting money back to wherever those folks are living, and you're not providing that benefit to the locals, and you're doing them a disservice, which is something that between the borough, between the Alaska Native corporations that operate in those communities, they try really hard to grow our own essentially in those communities. So lots of opportunity there if we do it right.
Yeah, I would say, even for university students, or even if it's like a career services office, really having conversations with those students in that specific discipline and learning about what they want to gain from that discipline and that field of study that they're in, and utilizing that information to inform industry as well when they begin recruiting, looking for talent for specific occupations, whether it's operator or engineer or technician perspective. Community engagement is about people. I mean, you have to love people to really be strong in community engagement. You can't say, oh, I want to engage community, and then you get in front of people and they give you honest opinions, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, they were too mean to me in the conversation. They were too honest with me, so they didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. And so you have to have tough skin when you are going into communities that have been under long-term unemployment, generational poverty, faced with barriers, early, parenting, teens, individuals with criminal backgrounds, and some of these individuals are in universities, right? And so you have to be very diverse, not necessarily in ethnicity, but in background and lived experiences when you're talking to community members about what you're thinking you can put before them that could help them improve their lives if they choose to take on that opportunity. And so I would highly, what's one thing we've done, we've had students from other universities that I've spoken with to let me know about, recruiting and, how was their recruiting experience, and, students that are receiving financial aid in their senior year, what does that look like if you don't have a job after you graduate? Do you need an internship? Do you need an apprenticeship? And so, having a conversation with individuals that you think, oh, well, you're graduating from UT, more than often than not, you don't get a great job and, life is going to be grand. It's not the truth. I mean, it's hard, for every student at every four-year university, including here. And so if you're not in tune with the real-time problems, then you're going to miss the boat on how you can come up with the best solution to really engage community once you get outside these walls. Because it's not easy to sit in front of a neighborhood full of people and they're angry because they don't have a job and milk is, $7, here, or, ground beef is like $7 or something. It used to be like $2 or $3. I mean, and so people are coming in angry on who are you to think that you're gonna tell us what, help our, neighborhood. And so these energy jobs, the emerging energy sector, when you're looking at hydrogen, when you're looking at solar, when you're looking at biofuel and sciences and environmental justice, health and safety, when you're looking at these occupations, they're gonna be here for the next 200 years versus other occupations that will not be here, or I should say will be significantly reduced as far as the utilization of that energy. I tell people, at one time, it was all candle makers, right? We all made candles. I mean, we lived by candlelight. That's how it was. And then electricity came over, and all of a sudden, people didn't even want to flip on the switch because they would think the house would burn down, and everybody was scared of electricity. But we have it, right? Like, we have lights, and we still have candle makers, and people are still making good wages and doing both of those things. And so you can't look at one industry and say, oh, well, I know it's kind of, apples and oranges, but from a conceptual perspective, industry is industry. So you have to figure out how to make it attractive to your future workforce getting into that energy sector so they can really understand if you're moving from another industry source, you can still be valuable in energy in the sector that, we all are talking about today. So I just want to kind of, make that point that you have to be really transparent with people as it pertains to what you want to learn from them so you can help them better.
We have a question over here.
Well, one thing that I just wanted to add in relation to this, we talk about all these institutions, all this funding. At one point, I served on the Houston Independent School District Board of Education, and I remember looking at a $2.2 billion budget and all these different investments in courses and classes and campuses, and I wondered why there were so many challenges in terms of student performance. And I remember thinking, it's like, how are we going to be able to make this community stronger to uplift and, try to get this achievement gap to shrink? And, I sat there and I was like, we can't do it alone. We can't, right? And so you have a K through 12 system that is oftentimes siloed. You have a higher education system that's oftentimes siloed. You have employers trying to work with groups but not sure who the right person is to talk to. Many people, I'm sure if I ask for raising, how many people even know what a workforce board does, right? Because it's like we're not very good at promoting ourselves. People don't necessarily know what we do and who we are. And so that's one thing that we're working on with this community engagement strategy. One of the critical elements that a person needs in their life, whether they're an employer, a resident, or anything, it's building social capital. We don't often talk about social capital. That's the rich network of individuals that can show you and lead you to places that you've never heard of before. And that's one of the benefits of being in a university setting or in a conference, right? And so, but you have to, as we've been describing and discussing, be intentional about it. Have it incorporated into your strategy. And that's not often happened. So, in the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, we're a part of the governor's tri-agency initiative. It's the first time of trying to get the Texas Workforce Commission, the Texas Education Agency and the Higher Ed Coordinating Board to start working together. And that's been going on for about, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. But you can see it's still like figuring out if we're going to go in the same direction, we can't just walk that way. We have to learn how to speak a common language as well. And that takes time.
Thank you very much. Do we have
Brian,
Harry?
you discussed sort of the good way to engage and the bad way to engage. I guess I don't want to be too negative here, but have you seen the bad way to engage so much that the project just doesn't even go through? Communities like, forget it. I don't want to. I mean, you've talked about like 15 years of engagement. It's a long time to maybe have something not happen. So I don't know, just curious examples of how a project just didn't go through because the community was like, sorry.
Yeah, good question. So in the case of the Willow project where that was going on, a lot of that's predicated by federal policy and how long that process takes. And in that case, that one went through. But if there is that early engagement, you might get an indication of that not going through earlier on than when you're ready to make an investment, right? In the case of Willow, it was very productive in their working with the communities because the alternative that was selected by the administration was actually one of the communities that would have been closest to that development actually selected, right? Through that dialogue, right, they were able to say, well, we don't want this, we want these things, and this would be suitable to us, and it was alternative E, I remember it very, very specifically, but that's the one, because of all of the engagement from industry with the communities and from our engagement and our organization's commitment back to the federal government through that consultation process, that's the one that got selected, right? So you reduce your risk, I guess, of that not happening if you start early and often, and it's meaningful engagement, right? That's one word that I didn't hear today, but that meaningful engagement, we talked about building trust, and it's huge, and we have a lot of trust with industry that took since 1971, where you couldn't get us into the same room, till today, to where we're in the same room quite often when we're discussing these projects.
Hello, thank you for this wonderful talk. For Nagruk, but also the whole panel, if you have any input, you said that you represent 24 other representatives. Well, have you ever faced the problem where their consensus over an issue differs from what you personally believe? So basically, how do you balance representing the community and respecting what they want versus what you personally believe is best for the community?
That's a very good question. I often get reminded that I do not get paid to share my opinion, right? My job is to advocate on behalf of the collective on the North Slope, personal feelings aside. I haven't been put into a position yet where that's been really difficult, if I'm being honest, but I'm sure that if I'm here for any length of time, that something like that will come up. That's not to say that during the discussions when they're about to vote to get me to advocate on something that there's not contention in the room amongst the group, right? And so, but because we have the group, we're able to share those things amongst each other, get the buy-in early, and then I can be directed to do what I need to do. But it's definitely something that I'm sure will come up in the future. But at the end of the day, I have a job to do. My job is to reflect what they're asking me to do, and I have to be able to put my feelings aside and go after it.
Yeah. And we don't prescribe to the community what the community should be doing. We provide opportunities for the community to select if they want to engage in this effort. Our community engagement is to get the resources and the information and the expertise from them on how we could formulate our solution for our problem that we have in industry and give them an option to buy into that if that's something they want to do. We're not telling them this is what you should do in your community. Everybody should be in energy and this energy transition and renewable energy source in this space. We're saying, hey, we need to get information from you so we can make sure we're making the best decision based on community conversations and data and the issue that we have with industry and lay out this opportunity for you to engage. And so that's what we're doing at Chase. We're opening up opportunities for individuals to engage in this work, not necessarily saying you have to engage in the energy sector for your careers.
So I think, David, do we need to wrap up for the session that everyone wants to learn about, which is the solar-powered wine, which is next, right?
Yeah.
So, or can we keep going?
Actually, we're at time. If
Yeah.
there's one more question, any more questions? If there are no more questions, we'd like to thank you very much and welcome you on
Yes.
campus.
Thank you.
And enjoy
Thank
it.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.